So for power, I'm going to use this Power 32 770 kV E-Flight motor. Hopefully with a 4-cell pack I should get the RPM I want. But it's got this huge honking ass mount. And it didn't fit in here quite. So I had to take and sand the corners off the nose there just to get this to fit in. And it's going to be about 1/16 of an inch away from the Brodak motor mounts, which is fine. Everything I found, I'm going to have to get in there with the Dremel. It's the shaft in that motor running into the balsa there, but just a matter of zinging that off. Firewall set up. I drilled pilot holes here actually. Your drill isn't going to fit in there, so I get this long skinny little size 1/16 drill. Did the pilot holes and just finishing her off with the little finger drill. And that drill is a 5/64 for my number 4 sheet metal screw. I got 2 of these. One for the tiny drill bits. I'll hit them with some thin CA. And that'll, let's set them up. And the screw is not as bad as I thought. I thought I might come into this brace here. And it didn't. It's coming just under. You could grind a blind nut and put that in there. I'll explore that possibility with 440 screws, but I think they'll work just fine. That's plenty thick. Probably metric. It's showing, yeah, it's actually 3/16 of an inch. Yeah, 3/16. Just marked the lines. After centering up the wing, I got measured it from the outside edge of this cap. Everything looks pretty much aligned here to the fuselage, so I got her bang on there. I used a square to get the wing because there is a little itty bitty tweak this way in the fuselage. At least it's going in the right direction. If it is, it's so slight. But I used a big Hopico triangle anyway to get her lined up. And then to be double sure, I measured from this corner here to the nose. And the same on the other wing, and she's spot on. So all I gotta do now is remove the covering, and I think how this goes is I gotta put the flaps on and put that center section all in. So I gotta assemble this whole wing, and the whole schmozzle looks like it fits through here. Now what I'm gonna do is I'll remove the covering from the center. So a lot of times you remove the covering, it's thick enough to make that a little tighter than normal. So I'll remove that covering. And then once I figure out where the feller piece goes, I'll do the same to that. I noticed in all the instructions for all the Brodak's airplanes, he says to use medium CA to put these wings on. So we'll see. I'll see what the gap looks like. It's as tight as it is now. I might try it. but we'll see. It's going to be kind of decent looking thing. Another one I ran into is how far off to the left this damn pushrod is. Yeah, so that means with these horns they give you, this pushrod's gonna go way the hell over like that. Yeah, it's kind of hokey. I'm not feeling all warm and fuzzy about that. Yeah, that's a little hokey. So I got these Dubros and left and right. So I'll take the one with the foot going to the left, which would probably be the right. Bolt that on, and at least that'll bring me over to closer to the edge, so I don't have this bloody thing going all the way over like that. I was toying with the idea of sawing that off and then soldering on a clavice or something. We'll see. Running into some more stuff on this ARF. The hinge slots are all over the bloody place. I'm not using the CA hinges, especially on a control line. You want nice free moving controls, and they're going to be stiffened up if you use CA. But they're pretty sloppy with the hinge slots. You don't think you can make that out, but you can see how crooked that is. Well, this thing was way off center. Fortunately, I'm using, well, these are hinges that came with my smoothie. I decided I'm going to use them on this airplane. They're a little brittle. Well, not really brittle, but they're a lot stiffer than the Dubros, but they're bigger. But I didn't really want to put them in the smoothie, worried about engine vibration cracking them. Where this is electric, I'm not worried about that. So I'm using a razor saw, or X-Acto saw, to go in. Unfortunately, by the time I got this centered, it was pretty much the right thickness for the for that hinge they go in. It's a little bit thicker than the Dubros as well. So I got the hinge slots all done here. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to do away with that wire for two reasons. One, it's pretty flimsy, and two, I'm going to widen it. Because after setting things up, there's too much of a gap on the outer edge here between the flap and the wing. The other thing is the alignment to the holes versus the ailerons are out to lunch. The vertical lines are where the hinges are on the flaps. So the X's mark, you can see them pretty good in the video anyway, like the X's actually mark where the slots are on the wing, and they're actually centered on the wing, so I was happily surprised there. Again, this side you can see the X's mark where the slots are versus the slots on the flaps. So, and the verticals, that's where the hinges go themselves. So the center ones mostly are, and this one's out to lunch too, on the left side of the wing. The right side's inboard's out to lunch, as you can see, and the center one. So yeah, and the flaps themselves, they weren't centered worth a damn. Fortunately for most of them, there's one I'm gonna have to put a 3/32 shim or something in there, just to get it centered. But for the most part, I was able to center them using my little X-Acto saw. So I made up a new joiner out of 3/32 because I took out one of my kits It's the FW190. It's the same series as these, so they're using 3/32. I was gonna go 1/8, but keep the weight down a little bit with the 3/32. This stuff's about 1/16, the one that comes with the kit, and as far as I'm concerned, too light. It's it might work, but I don't know. I'm just gonna go with the heavier piano wire. So see how that works. So won't have to worry about it breaking or bending. I glued my joiner in, and I did that on the flat surface here, and I used 5 minutes epoxy, which kind of got me in a bit of a rush. But I came back and I checked it out, and it looks good. So what I do, you always manage to get fingerprints on things. So while the glue is set up, it's still, actually it's a little bit rubbery. 5 minutes to be that little bit tacky or rubbery means it's not fully hard, and I had a blob on the bottom. So I just soaked some methyl hydrate in a cloth or rag there and let it set, and rubbed at it, and it came off. So as long as this stuff, if it's a little bit tacky or it's just starting to set up, then you still got time to clean up the fingerprints. So I'll wipe the whole thing down with epoxy, or with alcohol, to get rid of any little spots. So yeah, that looks good. So I figured I'll just let it finish hardening up with the flap on the wing. Okay, hinging, one of my favorite things in the world. Put some oil on the hinge joint, of course, and dab the excess off on a Kleenex. Make sure there's no oil on your fingers when you. Usually I take some alcohol and clean this up a bit, give it a wipe before I put the epoxy on. I had to make I just glued a piece of a balsa on here because of this fella. I had to hog it out pretty good to get it lined up. So instead of trying to glue a shim in there, you just glue it on your hinge. I'll epoxy that in there. I was going to use the Gorilla Glue, but the epoxy will be dry in half an hour, and then I can put the flap assembly on the wing. And the Gorilla Glue is going to take a few hours just to set up, so I'll go with the old standby. And a little something I picked up from Top Flight kits and ARFs is having a stack of, when using epoxy, having a little stack of cut up paper towel squares and a bottle of alcohol. And, just for tidying up and stuff. Works pretty good. I've got videos out on hinging. I may, one of these days I'll probably do one just on hinging. One of these days I gotta try Sparky's pocket hinges. So I put a very thin coat of epoxy on the hinge itself. So we'll get a little bit of epoxy in the straw, and I wipe anything off the end of the straw just to, so you don't get epoxy slobbed all over your airplane or your control surface. And just push it in there, and then I draw the straw back out, and leaves a pretty good smear of epoxy in there. And I like to see a little bit squeeze out when I push that hinge in. If it's too much, and this is another reason you oil your hinge, like I'm getting a little too much here. This is another reason I use 30-minute epoxy now. You see these little squares come in handy. I'll just scrape it off. Give it a little. But I find even when you get it on the hinge itself, because the oil that you got on the joint, it won't glue your hinge shut or anything. So that's one. And I'll do the rest. Tidying up a little bit of epoxy that might get along the edges. The next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a straight edge and make sure all these buggers are lined up with each other. Looks pretty good. I'll call that good, so I'm going to get the epoxy prints off. Lay those down because I don't want to smack one after lining them up. So I decided to replace this Pushrod. I was tired of, or kind of concerned about the quality of the one that they put in. The end of the thing that goes into the horn, it didn't look that great. So just the way the metal's kind of flattened and squished here in the 90. And yeah, that breaks. Probably not as much concern on electric, but I just decided it'd be better off with music wire and put a 440 threaded adapter on there. Okay, I got the flaps epoxied on here. Now the reason why I get the wing on a vertical like that, and I always do this, because when I inject the epoxy into the slots on the trailing edge, the trailing edge is about 1/4 of an inch, I believe. So the epoxy doesn't have a place to pack in like it does on the slots for the flaps themselves. So by doing this, when you push the hinge in, the epoxy's gonna, even when you inject it in, some of the epoxy don't want to run away from the glue joint. So by putting it on end, and after schmucking a plane, I found this works, the glue will run back towards the hinge itself, the blade of the hinge, and you got the glue where you want it. So it's not like there's piles of it in there, but it does seem to help. So I punched a couple planes in the ground and noticed on the remains that the epoxy did in fact kind of settle down around the hinge. As you can see, I'm using CA. I'm using medium CA to glue this wing on. I did the other side already, and I'll tell you, it works pretty good. There's a little gap, but medium is a good gap filler, and this stuff runs right in there. I was quite surprised when I did the other side, happily surprised how well the glue ran into that joint. And I did have to make 6 passes before it finally stopped sucking it up, and which is good. That means it's doing its job, getting in there, taking up any slack. What I did do though, as I initially glued it in place, I went to all the areas that were really tight, and I hit it with thin. And even here I can see she's pulling on that pretty good. That's awesome. The only thing I found that you do have to watch out for is the glue running right through to the other side. I had that happen. I came a little bit, Well, I did get on the other side and I got a little shot of kicker, and that stopped it from traveling. And then I flipped it around again. I don't have to do it now because the other side's all sealed up. But yeah, this is working very well. Although I did have to leave it overnight to dry because you had a lot of CA on there, which is fine. Probably didn't take overnight to dry. Oh yeah, she's a couple of spots there. She pulls it in good, and that's good because the glue is getting right into that joint. Over the camera so you can actually see what I'm doing here. I wouldn't use thick because what's nice about the medium is it's going right in there. You see some of the spots I gotta fix here. I over shrunk the damn covering. Yeah, so that it does fall into those gaps really well. I was pleasantly surprised how well that's working. And you just keep going over it until it stops pulling it in. So, just like I did the other night, actually I had it up on the bench, but I got it to the point where it stopped wicking in and it's settled. I just put some weight on the fuselage there. I'm just going to leave that alone, let her dry. And once it's all dry, you could hit it with the kicker, but it fogs and it leaves that bubbly, blistery look on your glue joint. I don't like that. Maybe I'm being too fussy, but I just assume just see a nice shiny line there where the glue is.